So, I said, you are gods, children of the Most High. You are all children of the Most High. We're talking about Psalm 82 today. And there's a lot of what I think is compelling evidence as to why the gods of Psalm 82 are in fact angelic sons of God and not human judges. And that is the two sides of the argument. There are some who believe, like I do, that the gods mentioned here are spirits, angels, and then there are others who believe that they are actually human judges. This breaks down into basically a translation difference between the Masoretic texts, Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Septuagint, which we'll get into. But to start with, I kind of just want to read Psalm 82 because it's not a very long chapter. And then we'll get into some of the more in-depth points about why I think this is referring to angelic spirits. So, we're on the Bible Hub, and we're looking at the interlinear. So this is the actual Hebrew text. Now, the Bible Hub uses the Masoretic text as their translation, which is going to highlight some of the issues that I was talking about, not specifically here in Psalm 82, but in other things that we're going to look at afterwards. But for now, we're just going to read Psalm 82. Psalm of Asaph. God takes his stand in the congregation of the divine. Among the gods he judges. Until when will you judge unjustly, and to the wicked show partiality? Defend the poor and fatherless, to the afflicted and needy do justice. Deliver the weak and needy from the hand of the wicked. Deliver them. Not they do know, nor do they understand. In darkness they walk about, are unstable, all the foundations of the earth. Forgive me for the broken reading. It's just kind of how Hebrew Aramaic is phrased. I said, gods you are, and children of the Most High, all of you are. Nevertheless, like men you shall die, and like one of the princes fall. Arise, God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. So, again, two sides of the issue are, who are the gods? Are they spirit sons of God, or are they human judges? Well, the first thing that I'm going to kind of present is an idea relating more linguistically to Hebrew and Aramaic. And that is an idiom in Hebrew Aramaic where whenever you see sons of X, like insert whatever, sons of blank, right? That is an idiom or a Hebrew Aramaic way of speaking to convey an idea, right? And what that idiom essentially is it's a way of describing like someone's nature, characteristics, or affiliation with like a particular group. It doesn't always mean like lineage, right? Like it doesn't mean literal parentage all the time. It can, but it doesn't always mean that. But in Hebrew Aramaic specifically, when you see that construction, it more so conveys qualities or like membership or status or that kind of thing, right? So you'll see something like sons of the prophets, right? The sons of prophets. It's not talking about prophets, literal sons. The sons of prophets are also prophets. And that's what the idiom does. Is whenever you see sons of group, it means that the subject is part of that group. So in Psalm 82, specifically when God says to them, I said you are gods. Now, this says and children, but B'nai Elion or B'nai Elohim, whenever you see that, usually is translated as sons of God, right? So I said you are gods, all of you are sons of the Most High. So it's not exactly sons of God, but the idea is still the same. You are sons of the Most High. What that would mean in the idiomatic way of speaking is that the sons of God are gods, right? He's saying it right here. You are gods, sons of the Most High. Whether or not he's talking to humans or spirits is the crux of the issue, though. There are parts of the Bible where it contrasts sons of God as far as and like sons of men, right? When it says sons of men, that's usually referring to humans. And if it said here, I said you are gods, you are all sons of men, then I think there would be the case of saying that these are human judges. But because it says sons of the Most High, I think it's an extremely compelling argument to make that these are angels. One of those cases is we find in Psalm 14:2, when it says, Yahweh from heaven looks down upon the sons of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. And in almost every translation that you can find, it shows the Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind, on the entire human race, the children of man, sons of men, the children of men, the children of men, sons of mankind. That is well understood that when you see sons of men, it is talking about mankind. Alternatively, in Job, I think it's Job 38. Okay, so in Job 38, God is talking to Job, and he's basically saying, like, who are you to question me, right? Starting in verse 4, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched upon it the line until what its foundations were fastened, or who laid the cornerstone? When sang together the stars, mourning and shouted for joy, all the sons of God. So what he's saying is, when I created the heavens and the earth, where were you? When I stretched out the measuring line and laid the cornerstone of the earth, and all of the sons of God applauded for joy, where were you? In this context, sons of God cannot mean humans, because he's literally talking about when the earth was created. So sons of God has to be angels here. And there are many other examples just like this that clearly kind of identify that whenever you see sons of God, it's talking about angelic spirits. And there's non-biblical evidence that kind of supports this as well. There's scholarly literature that kind of elaborates on this idea as well, that the idiom is a way to describe things. Some of those being Michael Heiser's The Unseen Realm. Ironically enough, Heiser, I think, is a Trinitarian. I'm not 100% sure. So we don't share that belief there. I'm obviously not a Trinitarian, and I think he is. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But The Unseen Realm is a pretty good book, describes this very well. Mark Smith's The Origin of Biblical Monotheism. It discusses from the Ugaritic texts, the sons of El, and it kind of relates them back to biblical texts. David Klein's The Dictionary of Classical Hebrew. It discusses specifically the idiomatic uses of sons of blank in regards to the Hebrew language. So those are some sources that anybody can go look up if they want a little bit more information on this. But the point that I was trying to convey with that part is that in verse 6, when it says, I said you are God, you are all sons of the Most High, that idiom is coming into play there. So it's saying that these sons of God are gods. And whenever you see sons of God in the Old Testament, that is referring to angelic spirits. Now, some people will disagree with that because in the New Testament, there's portions where we're referred to as children of God and everything like that. You got to keep in mind that, that's Greek, and I don't think the idiom transfers over as far as when you cross over languages like that. But anyway, so that's one piece of evidence as to why I believe that the gods in Psalm 82 are spirits. Let's take a look at the next one. At the end of Psalm 82, it says, Arise, God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. And right before that, it says, Nevertheless, like men you shall die, and like one of the princes fall. And it's very peculiar that it uses the word princes here, right? Like if he was talking to human rulers or human judges, why use the term princes? Right? Why not just say, nevertheless, like men you shall die, and like one of the rulers fall, or one of the kings fall, or like any other judge fall, right? Why specifically use the word prince? And that is where verse 8 becomes important. Arise, God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. We know from Deuteronomy 32 that God split up the nations, and Israel was his portion, right? He kept Israel for himself until here, where he takes ownership of all the nations. Okay? Now, Deuteronomy 32 is where the real issue of translation starts to become a problem. Because this is what Deuteronomy 32:8 says. When divided their inheritance to the Most High, the nations when he separated the sons of Adam. Okay, so right there, there's the idiom again. The sons of Adam, right? Humans. When he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the people according to the number of the sons of God. Here is where the translation issue is. This last phrase, according to the number of the sons of God. Even Bible Hub here has messed it up because it says in English, according to the number of the sons of God. But over here, it says Yisrael, of Israel, right? So their translation should really read according to the number of the sons of Israel. And that's the problem, right? That's where I think people are getting the idea that in Psalm 82, it's talking about human judges. Because the Masoretic text has presented Deuteronomy 32:8 as the nations being divided according to the number of the sons of Israel. But I think that's incorrect. And the reason being is because when you look at the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls for Deuteronomy 32:8, you see a different reading. The Septuagint specifically says, when he set up the boundaries for the people, according to the number of the angels of God. That's what this says right here. And I actually have it pulled up here as well. This is the Septuagint translation, right? And the very last word here is angelon theou. Angels of God. Now this, Google's translate is not always the best, but when the Most High divided the nations as he dispersed the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the nation according to the number of God's angels. Right? So already in the Septuagint, you have a completely different idea. It doesn't even say sons of, it just says the angels of God. But the idea is the same, right? That the sons of God are the angels, the angelic spirit sons of God. The Dead Sea Scrolls, one of them, backs this up. So 4Q Deuteronomy J. This is from the DSS English Bible, and you see children of Israel here, but it's struck through, and then it says God in red. If the scroll is different from the traditional text, and by traditional we mean Masoretic text, because that is what most Bibles are based off of, what most Old Testament translations are based off of, is the Masoretic text. So if the scroll is different from the Masoretic text, words in the traditional text that are missing from the text of the scroll are marked through in red like this, strike through, right? So this is the Masoretic text reading as I just showed from Bible Hub, Israel, B'nai Israel. However, this is what it reads in the actual Dead Sea Scroll 4Q Deuteronomy J, according to the number of the children of God. And when you click on this, it says this reading matches the LXX. Now, we've seen that it matches LXX in that it says God and not Israel, but again, in the Septuagint, it says God's angels. It doesn't say children of God. It just says God's angels. But you have here the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint both saying children of God. But again, there's even another problem. We see 4Q Deuteronomy J say children of God. And then a little bit later, you see 4Q Paleo Deuteronomy R, which is the same kind of collection. It's just another scroll of the same chapter. And it says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the children of men, he set the boundaries of the people according to the number of children of Israel. So you have two different scrolls found in the Qumran caves with both readings, right? So it's like, okay, well, which one do we trust? Which one is more accurate? And I think that's when it becomes important to take into consideration things like the idiom, context, and also too, what do you think is more accurate in terms of the Septuagint versus the Masoretic text? And one of the things that I think is incredibly important is the discrepancies in the Masoretic text. Basically what I'm saying is there are points where the Masoretic text differs from what both the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint say. And one of those is actually in Luke 3. Obviously, Luke is New Testament, so it's not part of the Septuagint. However, just bear with me. In Luke 3, it's talking about the lineage leading to from Jesus all the way back to God, right? And in Luke 3:36, you see this, the son of Canaan, the son of Arphaxad. In the Masoretic text, the son of Canaan, it's not there in Genesis, where it also lists the genealogy. Genesis 11, verse 12. And Arphaxad lived 530 years, and he begot Shelah. So when he was 35 years old, he became father of Shelah. And after he became the father of Shelah, he lived for 403 years and had other sons and daughters. Again, that's the Masoretic text that we were just looking at. 35 years. Arphaxad is the dad of Shelah, the father of Shelah, right? But in Luke, Arphaxad, the son of Canaan, who is the son of Arphaxad, and Shelah is the son of Canaan. So it completely omits in the Masoretic text Canaan there, whereas the Septuagint has him in it. And you can see that right here in Brenton's Septuagint translation. Arphaxad lived 135 years and begot Canaan, right? So already here, we see that in tying to Luke 3, which this is not a disputed reading, by the way. Every text that we have, every original manuscript that we have of this chapter in Luke has Canaan in it. So this is not disputed, right? We know that that was in the text. But then you go to Genesis 11:12, and you have the Septuagint, which correctly portrays it. It has Canaan's name in there, but the Masoretic text does not. Does that mean that the Masoretic text is completely wrong? Well, no. But again, compelling evidence as to why the Septuagint is more accurate than the Masoretic text, and why in Psalm 82, the gods there are to be understood as angels instead of human judges. So, like I was saying, the Dead Sea Scrolls have both. So that's not really the best. You can't really go to the Dead Sea Scrolls and be like, well, it's one or the other, because it has both. So again, you have to just completely go back to context and you got to kind of work through it. It's like a complex math problem. And the more you dig, the more it kind of makes sense. We see that there are cases here where the Septuagint is, appears to be kind of more accurate than the Masoretic text. And, that's not without its reasons either. The Masoretic text is like something like 1,400 years after the Septuagint translations. So there's a big gap there, right? Lots of things could have been changed or omitted from the Masoretic text before it officially came out, like before you had things like the Aleppo Codex and that kind of stuff. Another example of the Septuagint kind of being more reliable than the Masoretic text, at least in my opinion, is Deuteronomy 32:43. Again, on Bible Hub, their basis for the Hebrew Aramaic is the Masoretic text. But in the Septuagint, in verse 43, it should say, "Let all of the angels of God worship him." And this is backed up by Hebrews, because Hebrews is quoting this. Hebrews 1:6, right? And again, when God brings his firstborn into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." But again, we see that the Masoretic text, that part's not in there at all. It's just completely omitted. So this is the Berean Standard Bible. "Rejoice, O heavens, with him, and let all God's angels worship him." Brenton's Septuagint. "Rejoice, ye heavens, with him, and let all the angels of God worship him." So this is another example of how we see where, like, the Septuagint, where Hebrews is quoting this verse in the Old Testament, the Septuagint is accurate to the quotation, whereas the Masoretic text is completely missing that verse. And even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, for this specific verse that we're talking about, go to the one where it has verse 43, 4Q Deuteronomy Q, "From the head of the leaders of the enemy, rejoice, you nations." So that's in the Masoretic text. So in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it actually says heavens, "with his people, and bow down to him, all gods." Right? Again, when on this site specifically, when you see if the scroll is different, so if the Dead Sea Scroll is different from the Masoretic text, words in the scroll that are not in the Masoretic text are underlined in red. New words, right? And words that are in the Masoretic text that are not in the scroll are struck through. So going back to this, rejoice. So this is what the scroll says: "Rejoice, heavens, with his people, and bow down to him, all gods." So again, we see that the undisputed text of Hebrews, because that reading is not disputed either based on all of the codices that we have in the original manuscripts. So we see that the quotation in Hebrews lines up with the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls, but not the Masoretic text. Just more evidence that maybe the Masoretic text is not the best thing to go to as far as translation differences. And really, the Masoretic text is where this B'nai Israel comes from. Well, not entirely, because like I said, the Dead Sea Scrolls have both. There's one scroll that says sons of God, the other scroll says sons of Israel, right? So really what you have is you have one scroll and the Masoretic text that say sons of Israel, and another scroll and the Septuagint that say sons of God. They're kind of equal, right? There's two sources for each reading there. As we've seen, though, the Septuagint is kind of more accurate in some spots than others as far as the Masoretic text. Is that enough to go on alone and just completely disregard the Masoretic text? No. So again, it all goes back to context. And this is why I brought up earlier the thing about the princes, right? So we still, we have some evidence leaning towards them being angelic spirits, but there is still some support that they could be humans, right? So I brought up, like any of the princes you shall fall. And I posed the question, why use this term specifically? Why the princes, right? You could have used rulers, judges, kings, but specifically he says, like men you shall die, and like any of the princes, or like one of the princes shall fall. And this is what I think really seals the deal as far as it being angels and not human judges. And that's the book of Daniel. You may be familiar with this verse, but essentially Daniel is waiting for an interpretation of, I think, one of his dreams or a vision. And it doesn't specifically say that it's Gabriel, but throughout the book of Daniel, Gabriel is kind of always portrayed as the one that comes to give messages to Daniel. We'll start at verse 12. Do not be afraid, Daniel, he said. For from the first day that you purposed to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. However, the prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days. This is an angel speaking to Daniel. Most people agree it's Gabriel. Not specifically stated, but this is an angel. The prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days. Prevented me from delivering this message for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision concerns those days. So the one opposing him was the prince of the kingdom of Persia. Who can oppose an angel but another angel or a demon? Right? Who has that power? Who can detain an angel for 21 days but another angel or demon? No human could do that. And these are referred to as princes. And Michael, this is the archangel Michael that we're talking about, is known as the chief prince and the prince of Israel. And that is shown right here in verse 21. First I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. Yet no one has the courage to support me against these except Michael, your prince. Michael obviously isn't the prince of just Daniel, but Daniel is the representative here for Israel. So Michael is the prince of Israel. This prince of Persia detained Gabriel. And we know that these are angels. One, because Michael and Gabriel we know for sure are angels. And Gabriel later on says, I must return at once to fight against the prince of Persia. So we know that this prince had to be one of the angels, one of the sons of God, that was given one of the nations in Deuteronomy 32:8. This reading, the sons of Israel, wouldn't make sense otherwise. When you think about this, that this prince of Persia, Michael is the prince of Israel, this reading as sons of Israel no longer makes sense. Daniel 12, at that time Michael, the great prince who stands watch over your people, right? This is over Israel. Michael's again called the great prince who stands watch over your people, that people being Israel. Michael was appointed as the protector of Israel. This prince of Persia was appointed as the ruler of the kingdom of Persia. And even later on, right? After he talks about having to go back and fight the prince of Persia, when I have gone forth, behold, the prince of Greece will come, right? So we see that Michael the archangel is called the prince of Israel. The prince of Persia detained the angel Gabriel for 21 days. And now, as soon as Gabriel leaves, the prince of Greece is going to arrive? There's no way these can be humans. So then you go back to Psalm 82 and reread this. Like men, you shall die, and like one of the princes fall. That's the significance of using this word right here. It's why no other term was used. It's why it didn't say judge, it didn't say ruler. Like any prince, you will fall, right? Like any prince of men, like men you shall die, and like any one of the princes, you shall fall. Like any human prince, you will die. Because these are princes, angelic princes that were given dominion over the nations. They failed in their duty. That's why he's judging them in the beginning part. Will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? They didn't do what they were supposed to do. The Prince of Persia is detaining Gabriel from delivering an important message to Daniel for Israel, for the people of Israel. They're actively going against God. They're sons of God, and they're angelic sons of God in charge of the nations that have been given to them in Deuteronomy 32:8, that didn't do the job that they were supposed to do and are facing rebuke in Psalm 82. And finally, what I think is another very compelling piece of evidence is when you get to Psalm 89, specifically verses 5 through 7. The heavens praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness as well, in the assembly of the holy ones. Let's go back to Psalm 82. God takes his stand in the congregation of the divine. Let's see what some of the parallels. NIV, in the great assembly. Heaven's court, divine council. God presides in the divine assembly. Take a look at some Septuagint translations. God stands in the assembly of gods. So we know that that's what it's talking about in Psalm 89. In the assembly of the holy ones. For who in the skies can compare with the Lord? Who among the heavenly beings is like the Lord? In the council of the holy ones. God is greatly feared and awesome above all who surround him. Even disregarding everything else that I've brought up to this point, these 3 verses alone are probably enough to prove that the gods in Psalm 82 are angelic spirit sons of God. Or demonic. It doesn't ever specifically say, right? But they're going against God. So whether you want to call them full demons or just call them fallen angels or something like that. The point is that these are spirits, and they're not human judges. So when you go back to Psalm 82, God is calling the spirit sons of God, gods. Because again, when you think about the Hebrew idiom, sons of God, that is including them as part of a group. The sons of God are gods. Anyway, I hope that helped clear some stuff up for you guys. If you have any further questions, feel free to put them in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.